Hey YouTube, so it's time to take the newly hatched larva out of the VSH POL line queen to graft and put in the cell cups, and then after putting the cell cups, put it into the cell builder that we created this morning. Separate video on that if you didn't see that one. So come along with me, take a look. Let me know what you think. This is a simple grafting video. There's a lot of them on the internet, but this is how I do it. Enjoy. So this was the frame I identified earlier today when I was doing my checks that I think I want to use for my grafting based on the number of eggs and larvae that were available of the right age. There's a lot of capped on that side, but if you look on this side, there's a lot of uncapped, very young larvae. So this is the frame I want. Now, you might think, shake, get all the bees off. But if you do that, what will happen is all of those larvae that are in the center of those cells, resting in a little pool of jelly, will get kind of jostled to the bottom of the cell. You don't want that. So we gotta bee brush the bees off of this. Don't jostle the larvae that you're getting ready to go graft. And you will get to see me do that here in just a few minutes. So I'm just bee brushing. You can't really see me doing this on the other side of the camera, but just gentle bee brushing the bees off. They're in a pretty good mood. I haven't gotten popped yet. I have my veil on because I've been popped a few times today, but I've opened every single one of these hives rather aggressively today after I found the queen. Okay, so look, I got them all off. Let's go take a look inside the barn shed and let's do some grafting. Okay, we're in the barn shed. You don't need to see my face, you can hear my voice, but it's me. And I've got my frame rest here. I've got my cell bars prepped with my cell cups already. And now I'm gonna set in this little homemade frame rest I've got here, my graft frame in this rest. So it's kind of got the angle with the light overhead providing the best angle into seeing the cells. Now, there's a couple tricks I've learned over grafting, and I've been grafting for over 10 years now. I'm not a perfect grafter, but I have some tips. And the first one is you need to prime these cells. And when I say prime them, there needs to be something liquid in here so that when you are trying to get the larva off of the reed on your Chinese grafting tool with the plunger, a little bit of liquid helps. I keep a little jar of royal jelly from swarm cells that I pull, and I just add a little bit of water, and a half a drop to a drop in each cell is all you need to prime these cells. Sometimes you get a little bit too much, you take it to the next one. Actually, that's probably a queen larva there. Just a little bit of liquid in the bottom of each cell. All right, I'm gonna fast forward through this so you don't have to watch me do this. Okay, I have primed all of the cells, and hopefully that fast forward worked. Now, when I look at this frame, there is a definite difference in age. And when you're grafting larvae, and I'm gonna try to zoom in here, so I'm gonna move the camera for a second and try to get a close up. Now, the age of those larvae have to be almost as small as you can possibly find. When I say that, that means if it just hatched, it's gonna be a tiny little C shape. That is the larva you want to graft. So I'm gonna graft a few here, talk you through it, and then we'll probably do a time lapse for the rest of them, just because this can be a little bit tedious, and I'm using, oh, I guess I should have said this. I am over 40, as you all can tell, magnification. That's the only way to do this, magnification, for guys like me. All right, let's graft a few cells here. So when I get in here and I look, oh, there's a lot in here. This is great. So you go from the back of the cell where the curve is, you get the larva on here, and I can see the tiny larva on there, and I get in and I push it off. And I see the little C shape in there, I go to the next one. Now, I'm gonna do this fast enough that I probably don't need to put a towel over these larvae. Some people put a towel over the larva after they graft them. I am gonna do this so fast, hopefully I don't need to do that. And the priming of the jelly honestly helps me get away with that. So that was 2, and look at this. This one is right next to one that's an egg, so he's probably like an hour or even maybe a minute older than his sister in there. I'm using sister and his together, isn't that funny? All right, I can't even see that little guy in there. Yep, she's in there. I'm gonna keep going, so just watch me on the time lapse and let me know what you think. Okay, I'm bringing you back from the time lapse on my last 2 so that maybe you can kind of understand a few of the things you may have seen on the time lapse. And if you wanted to slow it down, you need a pattern. You need to have some sort of way of knowing where you are. And if you notice, I'm moving these cell bars over after I graft every 2. That way I know exactly where I am. And then I go top to bottom in a very repetitive pattern, because seeing these tiny little larvae is very, very difficult. So you may have noticed I move them every time to line up with just some sort of mark. I use this little mark. That way when I focus over here, grab a larva, I come back, I know I'm going to the top or to the bottom, and then I'm going from there. So that's it. I'm done grafting. This little graft tool has got a little bit of a cut in the top of it, so I'm throwing it away. They're cheap, get a new one. I've got a dozen of them over here. And now I can push this aside. We'll take that and put it back into the mother hive. But now you put these things very carefully vertically, so I don't want to disturb the jelly yet. So I'm keeping them vertical. And I put the cell bars into the cell frame, and they just squeeze in here like that. And I will hang them inverted in the hive when I get there, but I'm just trying to get prepared. So now I've got my grafts, and I've got my graft frame that I need to put back into 2 separate hives. So come along with me and I'll show you how I do it. Okay, first things first, we're gonna put the this frame back in its mother hive, and then we're going to put this one over here in the cell builder. We'll talk about that in a second. The sun's not beating hot, so I don't need to really worry about dehydration in a matter of minutes. But this hive is just a regular queen right hive that I'm just putting back in, putting the cell frame back in there. So all I'm doing is re-squeezing the frame, putting her back in there, and going from there. Getting us stung a little bit on the way because I did it a little bit rough. All right. Now, let me show you how I put them into the builder. Okay, if you watched my video from this morning, what you may have remembered is the queen is down in the bottom box below a queen excluder. I have a double screen board here that is making this top box queenless. So this top box has been queenless all day, and that is enough to make them start drawing cells. You don't need to do more than 24 hours just to get them to draw cells. So my experience is if you make them queenless and you give them a lot of bees, they're going to start drawing cells if you give them the right conditions. So You see this little gap I left here? I left this gap on purpose because I got pollen and food sources and young brood on both sides. So I knew exactly where I wanted to put my graft frame, and I didn't have to spend any time breaking the cells apart. I'm going vertical, straight in, closing it back up, tightening it up, putting all those lovely nurse bees back in there so none of them get squished into the cell builder. Those cells will be in there for 24 hours, and then I will take away the double screen board and make this a queen right with a queen excluder cell finisher. So that's the step we're in right now, cell builder, and we will come back in 24 hours and let them go. Now I just pulled out the little entrance from the back. If you watched my video from earlier today, I had them closed up. That closing up is part of the process of keeping them in there to make them queenless. Now that I have cells in there, I kind of want them to be free flying. If there are any older bees, they can go home. Drones, they can go home. I just want nurse bees in there taking care of those larvae that just hatched. So that's how I graft. That's how I put them into the cell starter. Let me know what you think. Hope you enjoy it. Have a great day.